What makes a proper Citroen? Is it enough to have just these double chevrons on the front? Is it that fancy trick hydropneumatic suspension that makes the car go up and down like a very slow yo-yo? Or could it be weird quirks, like, for example, the centre steering hub staying in the same place while the rest of the steering wheel twirls around? So for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, maybe some background is necessary. As a manufacturer, Citroen always did its own thing, and some people found that to be rather peculiar, rather unusual, while others found that to be very weird and wonderful. Those who were taken in became ferociously loyal for all that uniqueness. However, Citroen wasn't always in charge of its own destiny. Citroen went bankrupt twice. First in the 1930s, and it was bailed out by Michelin, the tyre manufacturer. And it ended up being a happy union, with the radial tyre, basically the technology behind the tyre on your car right now, being launched with the Citroen C3. The second time Citroen went bankrupt, it was in the mid-1970s, and it was bailed out by Peugeot, its arch rival, and that union wasn't so happy. Why? Because many Citroen purists did not like the fact that from 1975 onwards, all new Citroens would use Peugeot platforms and parts, therefore in their eyes diluting Citroen's uniqueness, distinctiveness and spirit. As a consequence, a fierce argument broke out. Was Citroen making proper Citroens anymore? And if so, what was the last proper Citroen? But before we get into that, we have to define what is a proper Citroen. So here are my criteria. One criterion you may be surprised will not be considered is comfort. Even though Citroens are renowned for their comfort, it's not all of them. It's the big Citroens. And I can prove it. The Citroen C3 is not only a proper Citroen, but perhaps one of the most emblematic. Yet, if you look at its interior and how Spartan it is, I wouldn't compare its comfort to, say, a DS or a C6. So with all that out of the way, let's get cracking. The first criterion is innovation. Innovation was essential to Citroen from the very beginning. The 1930s traction Avant was the world's first unibody front-wheel drive car, and then the Citroen DS had a laundry list of innovations from, of course, the most famous, the hydropneumatic suspension, which also controlled the brakes, the steering and the gear change. So it was the first mass-produced car with disc brakes. I could go on. The SM introduced rain-sensitive windscreen wipers and self-censoring steering. However, innovation comes at a cost. With these groundbreaking cars, Citroen set the bar very high for themselves, which meant they had to splurge lots of French francs in R&D to sort of keep that innovation ball rolling. So when the 1970s financial trouble came around, though caused mostly by external factors such as the oil crisis, the huge amount spent on R&D didn't help the situation. However, the innovation became intrinsic to Citroen's image. It really set Citroen apart. And that's sort of another thing that Citroen has, setting itself apart. And that's the second factor in what we have to consider to be a proper Citroen. Its distinctiveness. How unique was it in relation to equivalent cars of the time? So, for example, a Citroen DS had ride comfort that none of its rivals could match. You'd probably have to buy something like a Rolls-Royce or a fancy limousine to get that level of luxury ride. Same with the GS when it came out. The Citroen SM was a front-wheel drive Italian V6 powered Grand Tourer. No other car like that springs to mind. Even the Citroen C3, when it came out, it sort of like fixed a problem that no one else was solving, which was cheap yet reliable transportation for farmers in rural France. So yeah, all these cars were rather unique. Citroen really like to do their own thing, and this was a very French attitude. The French don't care what other people think, and Citroen was sort of like the automotive embodiment of that. And to prove that, they would sometimes do things that didn't have to be that way, but they did it anyway. These weird quirks, as people call them. We come to the third factor in this list. Weird little details that only Citroen put in their cars. Now, all of these quirks have a functional side to them. It wasn't just Citroen waking up one day and saying, oh, let's put something weird on our car. there was always some kind of practical thinking behind it. So for example, the Citroen DS, the saloon at least, has its indicators in tubes on the roof. They could have made the indicators part of the light clusters as all other cars, but no, they put it up high. Now, I'm not 100% sure what their reasoning was, but if it's up high, then a driver coming from behind can't say he didn't see you indicate, can he? It's the same with that odd mushroom-shaped brake pedal that the DS had. For those who don't know, instead of a proper regular pedal, Citroen put what looked like a button there. Now, I don't know if mixing up the throttle pedal with the brake pedal was a problem back in the 50s. You probably wouldn't have much of an excuse because they feel completely different. So to sum it up, innovation, distinctiveness from competition, and Citroen Quirks. Now, let's put that to the test. So let's use the Citroen DS as an example. Was it innovative? I think that question doesn't need answering. Was it distinct from the competition? Well, in the 50s, 60s and 70s, for that kind of comfort, you probably had to spend double or triple the money. So I'd say yes, there was nothing in its class that could rival it. And did it have those Citroen Quirks? Well, I've already mentioned the indicators and the mushroom pedal, so that's a yes. But using the DS for these criteria, it's cheating a bit because the DS is sort of the gold standard for Citroens. Let's use a trickier example. I'm going to pick a modern car, the C3 Plural, because it shows how the waters can get muddy. Now, the poor Plural has been lambasted by Citroen fans and non-Citroen fans alike, perhaps most famously by Jeremy Clarkson, you know, what was the worst car in the world, or yeah, the guys from Top Gear really don't like it. I do, honestly. I think it's a cracking little car. And for those who don't know, the C3 Plural is basically a Super Mini with a trick roof that can be just put back, you know, like a rag top, like the old 2CV, or you can remove roof components and leave them at home and you've got a full-blown roadster or cabriolet or whatever you want to call it. So was it innovative? It's debatable. In my opinion, that trick roof was sort of like a mesh of two things that already existed. So the canvas top was something, as I mentioned previously, that was present on the 2CV. The fact that you can leave roof components at home and if it rains you're stuffed, that's something that Land Rover Defenders have had for years and years and years, so I wouldn't say it's new. And apart from that, I don't think there was anything else that could be considered innovative. Was it distinct from the competition? I think so, very much so. When it came out, there was nothing like it. Super Minis were Super Minis, and I don't really remember any of them having this sort of ability. The Fiat 500 with a similar rag top definitely came out later, so yeah, I do think it is a unique car in that respect. So it fulfills at least one criterion. And finally, did it have any Citroen Quirks? Well, I don't think so. The interior was lifted directly from the C2 and C3 of the time, and they were both run-of-the-mill Super Minis with no real quirks. You could argue maybe the roof was a quirk, but yeah, I don't think so personally. As I said, even though I do like the car, it only fulfills one of my criteria. So the question of is it a proper Citroen, which is, by the way, it's just for the effect of this video. If you like plurals and you like cars that other people don't consider proper Citroens, you know, do your own thing and pay no heed to what they say. So I hope that's been cleared up. I hope you understand what the three criteria are that need to be met for a car to be considered a proper Citroen. And a proper Citroen, in my opinion, should comply with at least two of those three criteria. Our attention now will turn to what was the last proper Citroen, but that will be the subject of the next video. And if you would like to watch that, please stay in the loop, and the way to do that is to subscribe. Also, dear viewers, don't forget to comment as well. Tell me what you think a proper Citroen should have. I really would like to know, and I think everyone else would as well. And if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, and I hope to see you in the next video. I bid you farewell.